The chandeliers at the plaza were blinding, but not as blinding as my mother's smile for the Vogue photographer. We were lined up for Grandma Catherine's 80th Jubilee. Then my mother stepped forward. Her voice a silk-wrapped blade. "Linda, darling, could you step out of the frame? We need this to look aspirational. Just hold Isabella's purse." My sister smirked. I didn't argue. I took the purse and stepped into the shadows. I checked my phone. A single notification lit up the screen. Transaction complete. $32 million. Penthouse A. The building right next door. I looked up at them, posing. They had no idea I had just bought the skyline they were trying to impress. I stepped out of the frame, but I didn't leave the building. I'm Linda, 29. Before I tell you who actually owned the room that night, drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever been the invisible one in your own family? I want to read your story. I didn't storm out. Storming implies emotion. And I was done with emotion. I walked to the coat check with the kind of calm that makes people step out of your way. A waiter was passing with a tray of empty flutes. I stopped him. "Here," I said, placing Isabella's sequined clutch on his tray. "A tip." He blinked, confused. But I was already moving through the revolving doors and into the cool Manhattan night. The air tasted like exhaust and money. Most people would have hailed a cab to a sad apartment in Brooklyn to cry over a pint of ice cream. My family certainly thought I was heading to a shared walk-up in Queens where I supposedly fixed laptops for a living. I turned right. I walked exactly 50 feet to the limestone entrance of the tower next door. The doorman, Henry, didn't ask for my ID. He simply nodded. "Good evening, Ms. Linda. Welcome home." I stepped into the private elevator. No buttons. Just a biometric scanner. I pressed my thumb against the glass. The light turned green, and the doors slid shut, sealing out the noise of Fifth Avenue. As the car rose, my ears popped. It was a physical sensation of leaving their world and entering mine. They thought I was the family failures. The artsy dropout who tinkered with computers because she couldn't handle the pressure of the real world. They didn't know that while they were curating their Instagram feeds, I was building the architecture of the future. I wasn't fixing laptops. I was the founder and chief executive officer of Ether AI, the machine learning unicorn that had quietly revolutionized predictive analytics 3 years ago. The elevator opened directly into the foyer. Floor-to-ceiling glass. The city lay spread out below me like a circuit board. Silence. That was the first thing I bought with my first 10 million. Absolute. Unbreachable silence. I kicked off my heels and walked barefoot across the heated marble floors to the wet bar. I poured a glass of sparkling water. My hand was steady. I looked out at the plaza. I could see the ballroom windows from here. They were probably still posing. Smiling that tight. Desperate smile of people who are leveraged to the hilt. My father, David. I loved to talk about legacy. But his construction firm had been bleeding cash for a decade. He was floating on loans he thought were from a faceless conglomerate. He was wrong. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't call my parents. I scrolled past their missed calls and dialed a number saved simply as counsel. David, my lawyer. "Not," my father answered on the first ring. "It's done," I said. My voice sounded strange in the empty room. Clinical. "Are you sure?" David asked. "Once we execute, there is no going back. The foreclosure notices will be automated. They will receive the digital alert by 9 tomorrow morning." I took a sip of water. I looked at the ballroom again. I imagined my mother telling the photographer to crop me out. I imagined Isabella laughing, believing she was the center of the universe because she held a purse I was supposed to carry. Execute the call option on the Greenwich estate debt, I said. Call it all in. Tonight? Understood. Initiating now. I ended the call. I didn't feel happy. Happiness is a warm, fuzzy thing. This was colder. It was the satisfaction of a math problem, finally resolving to zero. I wasn't just an IT worker. I was the bank. And the bank was calling in the loan. I sat in the silence of my penthouse and let the memories replay. Not as a victim, but as a data analyst reviewing a corrupted file, to understand why I just called in a multi-million-dollar debt on my own parents. You have to understand the economy of my childhood. It was a rigged market from day one. My sister, Isabella, was the product. My parents were the investors. I was the overhead cost they tried to minimize. When Isabella was 14, they sent her to a boarding school in Switzerland. Tuition was $85,000 a year. They called it an investment in her global network. That same year, I asked for a coding boot camp that cost $500. My mother laughed. She said math wasn't a networking opportunity. She said I needed to be realistic about my social value. For her 19th birthday, Isabella got a Porsche Cayenne with a red bow the size of a beach ball parked in the driveway. She didn't even have a license yet. It was about the image. It was about the neighbors seeing it. I got my father's old laptop. It was a brick, heavy and overheating, with a fan that sounded like a dying jet engine. He threw it on my bed and told me to be grateful I had technology at all. But that laptop was the mistake that cost them everything. I didn't use it to do homework. I used it to disappear. For years, I analyzed them. I stopped asking why they didn't love me and started asking how their system worked. It was clinical. In narcissistic family systems, roles are assigned like actors in a play. Isabella was the golden child. She was their external ego, the shiny object they could point to and say, "Look what we made." I was the scapegoat. I was the trash can for their insecurities. They didn't hate me. They needed me. They needed someone to be less, so they could feel like more. If I was the awkward, artsy failure, then their neglect was justified. It is simple. Brutal math. They thought by ignoring me, they were erasing me. They were wrong. They were giving me the greatest education of my life. Invisibility is a superpower. When you are invisible, you can watch. While they were obsessed with mirrors and selfies, I was looking at the world. I learned to read micro-expressions. I learned to predict behavior based on vanity and insecurity. I realized that human behavior, even toxic behavior, follows patterns. And patterns can be coded. I taught myself Python on that overheating laptop in the dark while they threw dinner parties downstairs. I built my first predictive model based on my mother's spending habits. I learned that data doesn't lie, even when people do. Silence wasn't my prison. It was my laboratory. They looked at me and saw a failure fixing computers. I looked at the world and saw data sets. I built Ether AI not to get rich, but to prove that I could see things others missed. My algorithm, the Watcher, became the gold standard for predictive analytics because it understood human irrationality. It was built on the source code of my own trauma. They spent $5,000 a month on Isabella's image consultants, trying to manufacture a star. They didn't realize that in the room next door, the girl in the thrift store sweater was building a sun that would eventually burn them all down. They gave me the trash, and I turned it into a weapon. And tonight, the weapon was fully operational. I woke up at 6 the next morning. Not to an alarm, but to the natural light flooding the master suite. The silence was still absolute. But my phone screen was a war zone. My mother had left 7 voicemails between midnight and 3 in the morning. I didn't listen to them with dread. I listened with the detachment of an auditor reviewing a failed compliance report. "Linda, you have some explaining to do." Her voice crackled, tight with suppressed rage. "The Hendersons asked where you went. You embarrassed us, leaving before the cake cutting. It looked like you were throwing a tantrum. You are so selfish." Selfish. That was their favorite word. It was the weapon they used whenever I stopped being convenient. Then there was Isabella. I opened Instagram. She had posted a story at 2 in the morning. It was a black screen with white text. The universal signal for a curated breakdown. Some people will never support your dreams because they are too bitter about their own failures. Cutting out toxic family members is self-care. She had added a broken heart emoji. I checked the analytics on my own feed. 0 reaction. I didn't post a defense. I didn't text back to argue. I swiped to my email. At 9 o'clock sharp, a confirmation email arrived from the bank. Foreclosure, notice generated. Certified mail dispatch, initiated. The clock had started. They didn't know it yet. They were still worrying about the social optics of my early exit. Completely unaware that the roof over their heads was now a ticking time bomb. My father sent a text at 10. "We expect you at Sunday brunch to apologize to your sister and your grandmother. Don't make this worse. Apologize." They wanted me to come back to the scene of the crime and beg for forgiveness for being the victim. It was almost impressive how committed they were to their delusion. I typed my response carefully. It needed to be professional. It needed to sound like the capitulation they expected, while actually being a summons. "I agree we need to talk." I wrote, "But I can't do brunch. My schedule is tight. Come to my office tomorrow at noon. We can settle everything there." I sent the address. The reply was immediate. "Fine." My father wrote, "But don't expect us to stay long. We have a viewing at the club." They assumed they were coming to a cramped cubicle in a shared workspace in Queens. They probably imagined I would be sitting in a rolling chair with a broken wheel, surrounded by spare parts and wires, desperate for their approval. They thought they were coming to scold a child who had acted out. They had no idea they were walking into a lion's den. They didn't know that the address I sent wasn't a co-working space. It was the Aether Tower, and I wasn't going to be waiting in the lobby. I was going to be waiting at the head of the table. I set the phone down on the marble island. I drank my coffee. The city below was waking up. A million moving parts, all following the patterns I had spent a lifetime decoding. My family thought they were playing a game of social chess. They didn't realize I had already bought the board. They arrived at noon, sharp. My father was wearing his golf blazer, the one he wore when he wanted to project authority. My mother was clutching her pearls like a lifeline. Isabella was scrolling through her phone, probably checking if her vague post about toxicity had gone viral yet. They walked into the lobby of the Aether Tower, and I watched them on the security feed from my office. They looked confused. They were scanning the directory, probably looking for a small tech repair shop or a generic co-working space. Security intercepted them. "We're here to see Linda," my father said, his voice carrying that imperious tone he used with service staff. "She works here. Ms. Linda is expecting you," the guard said. "Please take the express elevator to the 45th floor." 45th, Isabella looked up. "I thought this was a startup." "Just go," my mother hissed. "Let's get this over with." They rode up in silence. When the doors opened, they stepped onto a floor that smelled of white tea and money. The reception area was stark, minimalist. and expensive. The logo on the wall, Ether AI, was etched in brushed steel. My assistant, Marcus, stood up. Mr. and Mrs. David, please follow me. He led them down a hallway lined with glass walls. They passed engineers working on dual screens, data analysts discussing predictive models, and a server room humming with millions of dollars of hardware. My father stopped walking for a second, looking at the scale of it. He knew construction costs. He knew what square footage in this district cost. The math wasn't adding up in his head. Marcus opened the double doors to the boardroom. I was sitting at the head of a table made of a single slab of black walnut. The view behind me stretched all the way to the Hudson. I wasn't wearing the hoodies they associated with my failures. I was wearing a bespoke suit, tailored to the millimeter. Sit down, I said. My mother blinked. Linda, what is... Whose office is this? Mine, I said. Yours, Isabella laughed. A nervous, jagged sound. Did you break in? Are you the receptionist? You can't just... Sit down, I repeated. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of ownership. They sat. My father looked around the room, his eyes darting from the view to the assistants outside to me. He was starting to sweat. We're not here to play games, he blustered, trying to regain control. Your behavior this weekend was unacceptable. Leaving the party, ignoring our calls. We demand an apology. And the house, my mother added. You bought the penthouse next door. With what money? Did you take out a loan in our name? Because if you did... I slid a black folder across the table. It stopped perfectly in front of my father. Open it. He hesitated, then flipped it open. The first page wasn't an apology. It was a legal document. An eviction notice. What is this? He whispered. A 30-day notice to vacate, I said. He scoffed. You can't evict us. I own that house. I built it. You built it, I agreed. But you haven't owned it for 2 years. I activated the console. The glass wall darkened and a screen dropped, revealing a debt purchase agreement. Nemesis Holdings, the anonymous LLC that saved you from foreclosure, your miracle investor, I paused. That was me. Silence fell. I bought your debt, your mortgage, your business loans. I've let you stay because I wasn't ready. Now I am. His face drained. You own my company. I own everything, I said. My mother tried to plead, but I pressed on. Another document appeared, an old withdrawal slip from my college trust. Grandma funded my education for 18 years. You told me the market wiped it out. I pointed at the forged signature. It was liquidated. $252,000. Signed in my name while I was in London. A forgery. Bank fraud. The next screen showed where the money went. Isabella's modeling fees. My career, she whispered. You paid for it with my future, I said. My father's voice cracked as he tried to justify it as an investment in the family. I didn't flinch. My lawyers drafted the criminal complaint forgery. Wire fraud. Embezzlement. If I file, you both go to prison. They crumbled. So, here's the deal, I said. Sign the Greenwich house over to me. In return, Nemesis forgives your debts, and the complaint disappears. You walk away free. They signed. 30 days, I said. No furniture, no art. They left the room like fading ghosts. Aunt Melinda entered with champagne. That house will need cleansing, she murmured. I'm not living there, I said. It'll become the Ether Foundation, a coding academy for underprivileged girls. The house that tried to break me will launch 1,000 others. People ask why I spent millions to evict my own parents. They don't understand the economics of trauma. I didn't buy their debt to destroy them. I bought it to free myself. I opened the family group chat and hit delete. I built my empire in their silence. If you're building in the dark,